right. Hey, what's going on? You already know it's your favorite host, Aisha Lewis Redway. I'm here giving you another episode, a special edition of Indie Talks. Listen, look where we at, y'all. All right. So, of course, we always come through speaking with some of the most talented and most creative individuals. And today I have the pleasure of sitting with the multi-faceted producer turned artist.
Yes, man.
Ivory Scott. All right.
Fell 99 times, got up 100. Fell 99 times, got up 100. Fell 99 times, got up 100.
What's going on?
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have this conversation with you today.
I appreciate
you
that.
Looking good and everything. I love it. The drip, all that from head to toe.
Thank you.
Let's jump right into this. Coming from Chicago.
Yes, ma'am.
I hear a little bit of your story last night with the listening session.
Sure.
Shout out to Monarch Music Group, of course.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of talk about, being raised in Chicago and kind of going into the music lane. Kind of talk about that story and kind of let us know what that was like.
Yeah, growing up in Chicago, of course, you hear a lot of horror stories, and a lot of them are true, you know what I'm saying, about Chicago. But of course, Chicago's my home. I love Chicago, but of course, coming up was tough for me, you know what I mean? Growing up on the south side of Chicago is just you know what I'm saying, making it to 18 is a win, you know what I mean? And I'm blessed, you know what I'm saying, to be able to do all the things that I did, because it's impossible, where I come from, you know what I mean? It definitely was a struggle. Yes.
And when was that pivotal moment for you that you knew that music was gonna be it for you?
Man, the crazy thing is that I played football, but I always did music. Every point in my career, no matter where I ever live, I always say any house I've ever lived in, any situation I've ever been in, I always had a studio. You know what I mean? Because I always created the atmosphere to create. And I think that that's so important, when you're chasing anything. If you really want to do something, you got to create the environment for you to be able to create what you're trying to do.
And when you first started writing, was that more you kind of accidentally came into it, or it was this was just pure at heart, I'm just a writer? Yeah,
so it started off I self-taught myself how to play the piano, and it just kind of went hand in hand, watching people The Dream. My mom was obsessed with Babyface. You know what I mean? So I just was always so intrigued with writing songs, and I've always had a lot to say, you know what I mean? And I feel like the best songwriters do, and I just fell into it.
Okay. Now, starting young, you're moving into producing, you're moving into songwriting. Kind of start talking about those obstacles of saying, you know what, I really want to take this serious, and I'm moving forward in this music industry, because we know it can be a difficult difficult path.
For sure. I feel anything, you got to be willing to give everything for what you want. You know what I'm saying? The obstacles that I had to go through, I lived in my car for 9 months. I slept on studios for studio set. I cleaned studios for studio time. I did, everything that I needed to do, and that, to have what where I am now. So it's in order to have anything good, worth anything in life, you got to make those sacrifices. And I've always just been willing to do that, because it's I always say, I've seen the bottom. You know what I mean? I'm familiar with the bottom. It's I want to know what the top looks like. And, that chase has always been unwavering for me.
Okay. And that story, it definitely resonates, because to really, and I'm gonna get into that, because obviously you turned artist, you got some new music coming out, and talk about the fact that you were able to get, realize like this is my big break, like really moving forward and saying like, oh, I have a name out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it's like, as a songwriter, man, you can pop in, you can walk into Walmart, you can walk in Walgreens, you can, I had the #1 record in the world and I could do whatever still. Nobody knew, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like, having a record like Real, you know what I'm saying, featuring my brother Kevin Gates, like, it started putting light on me and like, now like people be recognizing me, be like, Ivory Scott, can I take a picture with you, bro? I'll be like, so it's definitely like a curve for me and it's something new for me. But it comes with the territory, you know what I'm saying? And I love people, you know what I'm saying? I love communicating, so it ain't no problem for me.
I love that. Listen, you see him in the streets, all right? You better know his name.
Yeah, for sure.
Now you worked with so many artists across the board. So we're talking about your producer hat at this point, right?
Yeah.
Answering. So Beyonce, Chris Brown, Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about, how you were able to adjust your creative approach when producing, when it come into those multiple genres of hip hop, R&B, pop.
Yeah, I have phases when I fall in love with different types of music. Like when I was working with Fireboy and I just was so obsessed with Afrobeat music. Like I really dive into whatever type of music that I want to create. God just has given me a gift to be able to be a chameleon and do things convincingly. Like if I'm doing Afrobeat, it's gonna be really true to Afrobeat. I'm a perfectionist, so I study, you know what I mean? Like, whatever artist that I'm working with, if I know, okay, I'm working with Ed Sheeran tomorrow, I'm going to study. I'm going to make sure that I'm who I need to be when I walk in the room. Because I feel like, opportunities are all around us, you know what I mean? But you have to be prepared for that opportunity when you walk in the room. You know what I'm saying? You got to be prepared.
Stay ready.
For sure.
So you don't have to get ready.
For sure.
Okay?
For sure.
And one thing I love to ask, and I'm quite sure you probably get this all the time, of all the projects, which one challenged you creatively?
Man, I feel like working with it's crazy. This is but working with rappers, it's harder because there's an ego thing there. You know what I mean? Where it's I have to create an understanding that look, I'm here to take your shine. I ain't here to make you sound better. I'm just here to inspire you to be who you are. The fans are already in love, with the artist. You know what I mean? So I'm just that sprinkle, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
To pull out that little bit, in you already. So it's the challenge in that is getting past that ego phase so they understand, hey, I ain't, ain't no ghostwriter for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's definitely the biggest challenge when it comes to songwriting.
And when working with different artists, of course, you have your signature sound, whether or touch, I should say, as a producer, songwriter, and then obviously the artists have their own capabilities and what they bring to it. How do you stay balanced in that, just to make sure you not giving too much or they're not giving too much? It's just right.
I think that when I write songs for myself, it's so personal. If when you listen to the album, my new album Mud, it's a lot of personal stuff going on in there. I talk about things that I went through in my life. I talk about life experiences. Whereas when I'm working with an artist, I dive into that artist, particularly. I'm into what's on their mind. When we did Peru, I think I talked to Fireboy for 40 minutes before we recorded anything, and it's I don't know, man. It's like a science. You know what I'm saying? I learned, from Mike Karen that there is a formula. You know what I'm saying, to making a hit, and you gotta go in a room thinking about that formula, but also understanding where the artist is and where the artist wants to go, because that's why I'm in the room.
And would you say the one thing that I think about is when we think about what would you say would be the most memorable moment that you took away, that you learned something? Because I think sometimes we kind of go in, it was just we have that mode where it's just we know what the word, we know what we're going to do, we already know. But what is it that you took away from some of the artists that you carry as you continue your path?
Man, I learned, you learn a lot of stuff, in this business, because there's so many different forms of artists. But the most impactful thing that I think that I probably learned was there's no room too small. There's no situation too small. There's no situation, like there's no room too small, because like, you know, when I first like went in the studio with Fireboy, nobody knew who he was in America, at least. And you know, Tina Davis was, you know, she was like, you know, I need you to come out here and work with Fireboy, and you know, I got all these hits. I'm like, who's Fireboy? You know what I mean? And but I went to that session, and you know, that was the #1 record in the world. You know what I mean? And it's just like, so no room is too small. You know, no such. You know, I take phoners. I do phoner interviews. I do everything, because it's like, you never know in this business what's gonna be that situation that's gonna push you over the edge. You know, so every room is as big as the next.
I love that. And also, before we go into your upcoming album, I want to talk about that infusement of Afro beats and being international, because you did mention, like, who's Fireboy? Who was that?
Yeah.
Because we see such a climb when it comes to Afrobeats, Caribbean, any of that, right?
Yeah.
So would you say that it's more accepted now?
Yeah, I definitely would. I feel like, you know, it's always been such a spiritual and passionate form of music. You know, I feel like when it goes mainstream, then, you know, people, you know, Ed Sheeran, you know, Fireboy has Peru, and it's a great record, and the world is gravitating to it.
Amazing.
And then Ed Sheeran hears it, and he's like, wow, this is amazing. Then he gets on it. Now America's like, wow. So, you know, you got so many great artists that have came, Tim's, you know, that have come, you know, and it's so much passion in what they do, you know what I mean? And it's pouring over. You know, everything is like full circle to me when it comes to music.
All right, so now we at my favorite part.
Okay.
So, you have came from behind the scenes, and now you are in front, getting ready to present your debut album this Friday. Yeah. Titled Mud. Right? Yep. I know you already had a couple of singles that's out, 99 Times, as well, What You Like. Yeah. Talk about, you know, how does that feel to now be in the forefront in the sense of the artistry, right? And what does this project mean to you? I know I heard a bit of it last night, but I want you to kind of dive into that a little deeply.
Yeah, it feels like an exhale. You know, I feel like, you know, a lot of times, like when I'm working as a songwriter, you know, there's a box, you know what I mean, you know, that I have to stay in when I'm writing songs. Like, I can't just be like, you know, I'm going to do an R&B melody, then rap a little, and then I might catch a pop vibe or whatever, right? You know, so there's no box. And, you know, just like, it feels like freedom, you know what I mean? And in this project, it's just, it's like the meaning of it, you know. Mud, you know, I come from the mud, man. I literally turned dirt into diamonds, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I grew up, you know, on ramen noodles, you know what I mean? Year round, day around, every day, you know what I mean? And it's like, now to be, you know, pursuing it as an artist and using my talent to like motivate people that come from where I came from, and giving myself not just a voice through other artists, but like a voice of my own. And that's what this project like is for me. You know what I'm saying? It's my introduction.
Yes, I love it. Everything that I heard so far is amazing.
Appreciate that.
I feel there's definitely no skips at all. That's gonna be on this album. You have quite a few features, of course. 2 Chainz, Young Blue, Queen Aja, Tink. What track resonates with you the most that you personally that you could take away from this
one? It would definitely have to be Real. You know, I feel like, you know, Real is like, you know, what we all want. You know, it's like, even though like we living in a world where like everything is driven on an illusion, everything is driven on a highlight, everything is driven on, you know, what, you know, things that we don't really, you know, actually have. And it's like, you know, to have something real in your life is so valuable. Somebody that really loves you for who you are, you know what I'm saying? Like my mom would say, somebody that love your dirty drawers, you know what I mean?
That part.
Like, you know, that type of energy. And it's like, you know, to have something real in life in such a fake world, you know what I mean, is priceless. And you know what I'm saying? And that's the one that really like translates to me for real.
Yes. And if you had to describe Mud in 3 words only, what would those words be?
Man, 3 words, that's it?
3 words. That's all you got.
Man, mud in 3 words. That's so crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like one word, one of the words would be struggle.
Mm.
You know, another word would be overcoming, and the last word would be, you know what I'm saying?
Almost there, almost there.
Call your mom. Not
Phone a friend, phone a friend.
phone a friend, right? But yeah, you know, it's really hard to like, you know, put, like I said, like put this project in a box at all. You know what I mean? Because there's so many dynamics for this project. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But you know, I've come from nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like for real, for real.
Yes. And the one thing I do want to talk about, because obviously we're in an industry that's ever changing, and you know what, so many trends and
Yeah.
things of that nature, you know, have it. And the one thing I love that you said is that you definitely don't want to be put into a box.
sure.
Talk about the with the genres, right? How do you feel in a sense of when labels and I don't know whether it's PRs or managers or whoever is involved in the creative's, you know, position or whatever the deal is, when they say no, you should be this way or you should be that way and the things like that, do you, even though we don't want to be put into a box, do you feel like there's still room for that input, there's still room for that, be able to grow or maybe figure yourself out? Because there's a lot of artists that come in and, you know, they may know themselves and then maybe
Right.
they want to take a different route or different sound.
Yeah, I feel like being teachable comes with trust. You know, you got to trust the people, you know, that are around you, that are in position. You know, of course, you have to trust their expertise in what they do, but they also have to trust you. You know, they have to trust, you know,
part,
your
that part.
expertise in being a creative. And I feel like, you know, that's the beautiful thing, you know, that I have with Monarch and my team. It's like, you know, we have an understanding of who, you know, is great at what, you know, and I feel like that is the most important thing with any team. You got to know who's the 3-point shooter. You know, you got to know who's the dunker, who can play defense good. And when you figure that out, then you can say, okay, I have a team, you know, that I can stand behind. So, you know, it's a conglomerate of, you know, everybody looking at each other and saying, look, I'm counting on you for this.
Right.
So definitely that for real.
Okay, listen, y'all hear the gems? I'm just saying, you better tap in,
sure.
okay? And first of all, thank you once again. Shout out to your management. Shout out to Monarch
sure.
Music. And just for allowing us to be able to connect and be able to sit down and have this conversation. If you were to describe this era, shout out to Brittany Flint for another journalist who I had to take this. And if you had to describe this era, you know, producer, songwriter, now artist, what's that description?
Man, I think this era of music is very collaborative and free. You know, I feel like, you know, it gets a bad stain because it's like, oh, you know, everybody's so raunchy and so uncut, you know, and I feel like the rawness is bringing us back closer to real, you know, people actually, you know, being free and being themselves and not, you know, afraid of the judgment. You know, I remember when artists couldn't really be free and like, you know, ruffle their feathers, you know what I'm saying? Like really like stretch their coat out. And it's like this era, like we just, you know, we free, we do, you know, we express, you know what I'm saying, ourselves, you know, the way we want to express ourselves. And, you know, we free, man.
I love that. I love it. Yes. And I love in which this era in which we are in, especially with music,
Yeah, for sure.
to be able to express ourselves. Because, it was at one point, you know, oh, no, you got to cover this up. You can't say you got a girl or a man or, you know, nobody on CD, you got kids or anything like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I love that we're in an expressive time when it comes to music and being vulnerable.
No, for
right?
sure. 1,000%.
If you had to go back in time to really sit down with yourself one-to-one, what would that conversation be like? Would you say, nah, dog, you gotta change something? No, go this way. No, don't do that.
Honestly, man, if I had got to go back in time, I'd probably do it the same because, you know, every failure, every mistake, you know, every issue, every struggle, everything that I've ever been through in my life, it made me who I am, and I'm happy with who I am. So it's like I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go back. The only thing I would say is keep going. You know what I'm saying? Like those nights, I have one of my songs, you know what I'm saying? It's like I said, like, I can't remember all the times I quit, you know what I'm saying? Because I've quit countless times. There's been so many times where I found myself either sleeping in my car or laying in the bed crying, ready to quit, because the opportunities, they don't come, that often. It's just like sometimes I wake up and I feel like I'm waking up in a dream, you know what I mean? Because, a lot of this is unlikely, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy with who I am, and I'm happy with what I represent. Even with all the struggles, all the ramen noodles, all the nights sleeping in a coat, all the evictions, all of the, everything, it made me who I am. It cut me out, and, God made me who I am so I can be who I need to be for, my purpose.
Listen, won't he do it?
Won't he do it?
I want to do it every time.
Every time.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you so much again. So of course I have to ask, who's on your playlist?
Oh, man, we were just talking about this in the car. I've been making music so long, and I make so much music. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to get time to like tap in, and listen to other music. And I was
gonna say, because I get a lot of artists that say, it's hard for me to hear everything else.
Yeah, because I don't want, like, it's like even when I don't go out much, because when I go to the club, I'm sitting in the club and I'm like, all right, which one of these songs why are they reacting to this song? Mm-hmm. It's work, for me. So it's like
processing.
Yeah, every time I'm always thinking about how I can make the bigger hit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that music is made to enjoy for people that don't make music.
Yes.
I make music, so it's my job to create the vibe for people to vibe with it.
All right, you the vibe, definitely. And of course, at wrapping up for our platform, we have so many independent artists and emerging artists that follow us and pay attention to these interviews. For our artist that's trying to get it out the mud, what is your words of encouragement?
Man, never give up, man. Like, it's like, I always say, like I was telling one of my partners, like, the other day, like, it's going to be nights where you're going to be like, you know what, that's it. I always say never quit at night. Wait till the morning. Quit in the morning, because it's like sleep on it. You know what I mean? Because, like, the struggle is going to come with anything that you want. Anything, they say pressure make diamonds. Like, anything in life that's worth anything will take everything. So you got to be willing to sacrifice, you know what I mean? The people that make it to the top, they willing to give up everything to have it. So strive for greatness, chase your dream, and don't let nobody tell you no, and get your no's out the way. Because I got a lot of no's in my life. Even though, I might have tons of number ones. Mm-hmm. I walk in my house, it's plaques in every room. But for every plaque, I probably wrote 100 songs. Mm. So it's like, you got to outwork the opposition. You know what I mean? You got to outwork, and your time will come. Just stay down.
I love that, because it's like everyone see the good, but they don't see the behind the scenes.
They see it. They just see the highlights.
And when you're crying, when you snot nose face, like you buried in the room, like really just grinding.
For sure.
And like you said, those no's, because trust me, there are a lot of no's.
Get those no's out the way. It's so crazy, because like my first job, I was a door-to-door salesman. I walk around with a box full of like random cheap stuff, and we would go door to door trying to sell it, and majority were no's. Mm-hmm. But when you got that first sale, you got your no out the way. You were happy. You're like, oh man, I can do this.
Yes,
and you get 1,000 more no's. Yeah, so you got to get those no's out the way. And I'm just a prime example of that. A person that didn't accept the answer no. I just kept going.
I love that. And listen, grind to the end.
For sure.
All right. Well, first of all, Ivory Scott, thank you once again for sitting down, having this conversation with GENEUS. Listen, guys, you already know. Please, please, please. One thing about independent artists, emerging artists, we want to make sure we are supporting. Listen, Mud is dropping on tomorrow. All right. We're going to have a couple things out. And make sure you please go support, purchase, not just stream it, purchase. Because listen, get the money out.
For sure,
all right.
for sure.
And thank you so much for your contribution and what you do into this industry, and really being a prime example to young, now I'm gonna say our black men, our black young ones that's growing up and everything, and let them know, like you said, just keep on grinding, and keep going after it, because like you said, you got it from the mud.
For
right?
Sure. 1000%.
All right, listen guys, it has been real, of course, and I'm your host, Aisha Lewis Redway. Remember, it's always nothing but real music, real style, and real people, and it don't get no realer than this. All right? All right, so next time, peace.
Fell 99 times, got up 100. Fell 99 times, got up 100. Fell 99 times, got up 100.